The big question you need to ask yourself every day is, do I own a job or do I own a business? And unfortunately, the majority of contractors out there own a job. That's right, they're a slave to their own business. But the other side of the fence is so much greener, it's so much better, and that's when you're finally fully in control of your destiny, your freedom, your time. And that's what Contractor Secrets is about. It's about taking back our time, building a business with systems, standards, values, procedures, putting yourself in the driver's seat. And that's what it's about. So I'm excited. I'm happy to have you here. Let's dive into the Contractor Secrets podcast. All right, cool. All right, everyone. My name is Tanner. I am here with the man, the myth, the legend, Kyler from Colorado. How's it going today, Kyler?
Thanks for having me, Tanner.
Yeah, absolutely, man. Definitely been following you on Instagram. A lot of what you do is pretty congruent with what I do in terms of how we operate our business. And part of Trade Thrive is kind of giving that sneak peek behind the scenes. Really wanting to know what it is that you've done to get you to the point to where you are. So why don't you just start with telling us a little about who you are, what you do, really what separates you in the painting business.
Okay. Do you want me to kind of start from the beginning?
From the beginning, man.
From the beginning.
Meat and potatoes.
All right. Cool. Well, I basically grew up here in Highlands Ranch, Colorado. Grew up here my whole life. Went to high school. After high school, I was going to go play lacrosse in college.
Okay.
But decided, hey, I didn't really want to go put myself into all this college debt and then come out and have a job. So ended up moving up to Williston, North Dakota, and I worked in the oil industry for a little bit up there.
Oil industry.
And yeah, learned a lot up there. I was working with guys that were double my age, and it's the oil industry, so it can get a little rough up there. But
sure.
Learned a lot from it, and then came to a point where I was like, hey, I wanted to run my own business. I didn't know how to do it, where to start. I didn't know anything about it. I just knew that I couldn't be working a job and then put all my time into running a business. So the day I turned 20 years old, I put my 2 weeks up there in North Dakota. Didn't tell my family or anything. I told them all after the fact, and they're like, oh, you're crazy. You should stay up there. That's a great career, blah, blah, blah. I was like, well, I think there's more to life than this.
Sure.
So I moved back to Colorado and didn't know what I was doing. I just quit my job, was making, great money up there. And now I'm living off savings, and I was helping my friend's dad clean carpets.
Wow.
During that process, though, I got to see how a small business ran and operated. And so I was actually going to jump into doing carpet cleaning. And then I was. And then I was looking at buying a van, getting all the equipment and everything. And then my buddy, he was staining fences, and he was making pretty good money with that. And I was like, oh, what if I just did that with houses? Keep in mind, I've never painted a house before. I've done, rolling a couple walls, helping out on the inside of a house, but nothing taking on a full project.
Wow.
And then, so it was a couple buddies and I were like, oh, well, hey, let's start a painting business. So it started off with 3 of us total. By the time everything was all set up and ready to go, it was just me.
Wow.
So, hadn't painted before. And now, I had started a painting company and got told a lot of no's, did a lot of estimates, didn't know what I was doing. I was just kind of throwing out random numbers and seeing what stuck. And finally I got my first house and I said, oh crap, I have to paint this house now. I didn't have
the hard part.
Yeah, I didn't have a van. I didn't have a sprayer. I didn't have ladders. I didn't even own a paintbrush. So
Wow.
I had to get creative with it. And I ended up using my parents' Suburban. I used my dad's ladders. He had this super old sprayer that he let me use that it literally lasted me just to the end of the job where I was spraying the last section on the house. But since I didn't know how to paint, I had this first house. I got YouTube educated. Looked up on YouTube how to paint the outside of a house, how to prep it, how to pressure wash it.
Tell me you looked at the Idaho painter.
I didn't hear. There was another guy out there. I don't know he's not that big anymore, but I don't know what his name was, but he had great content, and I did exactly what he did. And I think it was a small house, which would have taken a crew of 2, maybe a day to do. I was there for 7 days, 12 hours a day, just working it myself and finally
Just
got
hammering it out, man. That's
yeah,
awesome.
got it done. And so that's basically how it all started. And then learned really quickly, like, hey, I am not a painter. And the whole point in starting the business wasn't so I could paint, it was so I could run a business. And so from there, I started bringing on crews and brought on a sales guy and a project manager, and just been growing ever since. So last year we
Wow.
did about 150 houses, and this year we're on track to do about 200 houses.
Wow, that is the ultimate rags to riches story, man, and that's inspiring. And I mean, to anyone listening out there, I mean, at the end of the day, one of the things that I like to preach is that if you are starting a business, you have to be willing to get your hands dirty. I mean, how much did you really learn by getting your hands dirty? I mean, I can imagine it's only benefiting you now just to have that hands-on experience. Am I right?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's one of those things where I'm more of a person that, if I don't know what I'm doing, I'll just jump into it and just try to figure it out along the way.
Sure.
And so basically, with each step of my business, like that's kind of what I did. I just threw myself in the fire and I was like, all right, let's figure it out.
Sure. Sure.
Brought on the first
Wow.
crew. All right, figure it out. How do we do this? How do you bring on good people? All of
Yeah,
that.
yeah, and that's kind of how you have to be in business, and I'm sure you can attest that every stage of the way, whether it's getting out of the brush or if it's transitioning to having someone else take over the estimating role, this is your business, so it's scary, kind of letting those things go. Would you agree?
Oh, 100%. The
Yeah, I
moment you
mean,
let go of, taking full control over something and releasing that to
absolutely.
somebody else, it's like, you got to trust that, hey, everything's getting done the way you want it done, and it's turning out the way you want.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. And part of it is just finding people that care a little more than it just being a job,
Yep.
and having that, not only that respect for the place they work, but for you as the business owner, knowing that anything that happens it falls on your shoulders, because they could leave at any time and you're left with what's left. So
Yep.
one of the biggest things, and this, I mean, this is something that I preach a lot. It's just people ask me, how do I know when to get out of the brush? And if you could only know how many people in the painting business are just stuck in that production phase. For you, it sounds like you were in and out, kind of just like how I was.
Mm-hmm.
It was one of those things where I recognized, the more the merrier. The more people I have on this job, the more people, or the faster it's going to get done. What advice would you give to someone who's really just stuck there and just afraid to get out of that production?
Yeah, that's good. That's a great question. So the way I looked at it in my eyes was, I remember doing these first couple houses, putting all that work in, and say I was making, say $2,000 on a house. That's a small job size, but say it was $2,000
Sure.
you're making, paying for your materials and labors. You're taking all that labor. Well, once you bring on a crew, your profit margin isn't as big as it once was. But this is where it all comes to a mindset of how you have to look at it. Instead of focusing on, hey, I'm going to paint, 5 houses a month, it's like, okay, how do I find 10 houses a month to paint, and
Mm-hmm.
then bring on a crew to paint that so you can still make that same amount of money? And so it's kind of just, volume. And like you've said a lot, is you got to start focusing more towards that sales and marketing aspect. You start focusing there, you're not going to have the time to paint. You're going to start putting people in place, and you're going to start creating your team to do it. And the moment you let go of that paintbrush, you
Sure.
also got to be okay with, hey, your guys are going to make mistakes. You can correct them and fix them along the way, but it's just going to happen. People are going to be people. And so you got to be willing to sometimes fail a little bit, get kicked a little bit, and then be able to move forward.
Yeah, yeah, and I think you hit it on the head, and it really just comes down to the money. I mean, it has to, because here's the thing, like you said, like, okay, I can make $2,000 on one job and paint 5 houses a month, or I could take a little piece from 15 houses a month and not have to trade my time for that money.
Yep.
And really, at the end of the day, as a business owner, how many different tasks does a true business owner have? There's probably 25, 30 tasks that we could rattle off back and forth.
Yep.
Production takes up the majority of your time. So if you have a pie graph of 100%, production during the day, if you're painting your own jobs, is taking about 70% of that pie chart, which leaves 30% for the other 29 tasks that need to be done if you're trying to operate efficiently.
Yep.
So, getting out of the brush, that's a huge one. Why don't you tell me a little bit about what it was like for you to get out of the estimating? Because, for as much as I want people to get out of the brush and get out of that production phase, it's just as important to start eyeing the next phase is getting out of the estimating. Tell me what that looks like for you and how you made that transition.
Great question. So when I made the transition of bringing on a sales guy, we weren't a ton of estimates coming in. I was maybe doing 5 estimates a week or something, but I knew, because what happened was a lot of the work we do is on the south side of Denver. I had a girlfriend, we're now engaged, but I ended up moving to northern Colorado. So from like where the main part of my business was, it was probably about an hour and a half drive.
Oh, wow.
So very quickly I learned that I couldn't do a 3-hour commute just to get to that area and then drive all around there. So I was like, I had to put somebody in place right away. So I kind of got forced into a position where I had to bring somebody in. So I didn't know what I was doing at first. I just hired basically the first person that came to me. I was like, oh, yep, you're a good fit. And then just kind of went for it. He turned out really good, worked out well for, 6 to 8 months, for a painting season. And then, he wasn't the best fit, but I kind of got forced into the position because once you start running a business, it's all about your time. You realize, hey, it's not going to put 8 hours in at a job site paint. It's like, okay, you have 8 to 12 hours for a working day. How are you going to utilize this time to the best to help make your business grow?
Yeah, I absolutely agree. So it was, and sometimes those forced decisions are the best ones, man. And, I'll kind of speak about my transition because that's where we are in our businesses, that I made that decision to put someone in place. I think I reached out to you and kind of asked how it worked for you. But one of the things that I did, being as though that I'm still local and it really wasn't a forced decision. It was just like, it's time to kind of pass the baton, man, because, as a business owner, your sales are everything. I mean, you have the responsibility initially to make sure that your employees and the people working for you can pay their bills.
Yep.
Now that responsibility falls on this other person who doesn't have the same pressure that you did. So, if he's okay with going home with only making 3 sales, in 2 weeks, that's different than you going home with 3 sales in 2 weeks, knowing that you're going to have, 8 or 10 people wondering, where their paycheck is.
Yep.
So, so there's some back and forth there, but it's one of those things that if you don't do it, if you don't just go in on it, you never will. So it's one of those things that you just really have to just accept that it's another stage of growth.
Yep.
And continuing on this path of growth, we know that the next phase of this, really is just focusing on marketing. So why don't you tell us a little bit about, what your role is now that you're kind of out of the sales role, you're out of the production role. What does your typical day look like? How do you maintain the workflow, and how do you communicate with your team?
Yeah, good question. So as of right now, I currently don't have a production manager, so I am stepping into that role somewhat. But right now we have an absolutely phenomenal crew of painters. So they really do a good job of kind of handling all that. I think as far as like my day to day, it's a lot of what I do is I'm focusing on, hey, how can we put ourselves out there more on social media? How can we get more reviews on our company? How can we bring in more leads? Whether it's using, lead gen programs like Home Advisor, or, there's tons of them out there, using those programs to, getting self-generated leads through Facebook. I've done some stuff in Google, haven't really cracked the code on that one yet. But a lot of the stuff where we focused a lot is on Facebook. So just running Facebook ads, also putting out organic content, and driving people to the website. I've seen it's just been phenomenal.
Yeah, and with technology, you really are in the driver's seat with the avenues that we've been afforded with technology. and
Yep.
these paid lead services. You think back maybe 10 years ago, 15 years ago, before these things were really popular. Door knocking was the most efficient. Paying a couple guys to run some leads and go out there was the most efficient. What are your thoughts on the direction of the way homeowners are buying paint jobs from painting companies? What is your I would say, what is your assessment of how the future of the business is going to go?
Yeah, great question. Well, I think you've talked about this a little bit too, and I would definitely agree with you in the fact that, homeowners, they're definitely, how they're hearing about a lot of painting companies or discovering them is through a lot of these third-party lead gen programs. These companies, their sole job is to get leads, and therefore they're spending a lot of money to get these leads. And it's all about like a cost per acquisition,
Right.
right? So, for us, to say you want to keep your marketing within, 10% of your total job size, say you got a $2,000 project that, you have $200 in advertising. Right. Well, what's happening and what I've noticed is, especially when a lot of these companies start upping up their ad budget, well, it increases my cost per acquisition. So instead of me, say, spending $50 to get a lead, maybe I'm spending like 75 to 85 to get that lead. And these companies can do it because they're spending $100 to get that lead, and then they're sending it out to 3 or 4 contractors, at X amount of dollars. So I think the way it's moving is, a lot of people are, going to be finding companies through that. But I think the other way is, really making sure that your company has a solid online presence.
I agree.
I would say majority of the customers that paint with us, they're always like, yeah, we went with you because, hey, we liked your estimator for one. That's usually what they say. And then the second thing is, yeah, you have a really good online presence. You have great reviews. Anywhere you go, people aren't really saying anything bad. You're controlling what people see about you online. I think that's the best way to put it.
And that's what it, really that's what it comes down to, is being able to really get people to know you, like you, and trust you based off of what your online presence looks like. I mean, and that's just the basics. That's, your website is number one. I mean, people are trained to go look at the website. Number two is those reviews. And, people read through these reviews. So one thing that I've been doing is, whenever we're done a job, I'm going to call that homeowner. And if I got them through Home Advisor, I just say, hey, whoever it is, Mr. or Mrs. Homeowner, Home Advisor is going to be sending you an email. It's going to ask you to write a little story about our experience today. Would it be okay if you could take a few minutes to do that for me? And the level of, I would say, depth that these people take in our reviews. I had a guy that wrote, I mean, he could have published this story. I mean, it's just about the crew and about the experience and about just the small details that we focus on. And I feel like if you can get people to emphasize those in your own words, it just makes people that much more comfortable with going with you, because you never know. I mean, you just never know what people are, what's real important to people. So for example, you get some homeowners that are huge about, just making sure that the crew is, for example, let's say the crew is neat and clean, and, they clean up after the job because they had a bad experience with a flooring contractor 2 years ago. Well, guess what? If you read through our reviews, somebody's going to tell you about how we vacuumed the house when we were finished, and, all that stuff. So, really, I mean, I truly believe that everything you're saying with online presence is 100% true. And what I've been doing is knowing that in the back of my head, and pretty much coaching my clients on how to make that even better for my business by pretty much explaining, hey, could you write a little story about our experience today? Not just saying, hey, they did a great job, yada, yada. Tell me about who your favorite painter was. Tell me about what you enjoy most. And what I'm finding is it's making a tremendous difference, and people are pointing out specific reviews. So that's been working for me. So in terms of, we talked about growth, we talked about lead services, we talked about all that fun stuff, man. Why don't you tell me a little bit about what's next for you, man? I think, any entrepreneur always has something in the back of their mind about where they plan to transition to, whether it's within the same business or outside of the same business. Any big plans for you going forward?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm always working on other stuff. So, how I always look at it is, my painting company is great and I use it as cash flow to fund other
Sure.
things. So I'm big into the
Yep, I do
cryptocurrency
see that
world.
every once in a while, man. Yeah.
I have a mining operation in Russia
Wow.
right now and also another one in South Dakota. So definitely focusing on a lot with that during this low time here in crypto, trying to build that up, and always doing multiple stuff online. I used to have a company selling products on Amazon and eBay. I had that a couple years ago, and so I'm always looking for new things. But the biggest thing is just becoming more financially independent,
Sure.
and just being able to take care of my family and all my
Sure.
friends, everything like that.
Sure.
So always looking for opportunities and meeting new people, and trying to inspire people along the way to do it for themselves, because I think the biggest thing is anybody can do what we're doing.
Sure.
Right, Tanner? It's possible for anybody to do, but it's like, hey, who's gonna put the drive into it? Who's gonna put in those long days in the beginning when you're not getting any success and you're not getting any
Sure.
traction? It's just learning to keep breaking through all those barriers and just becoming bigger than your problems.
Absolutely.
I had a mentor tell me, hey, these millionaires, billionaires, the only difference is they're solving level 10 problems while you're over here solving level 2
Yep.
problems. Like, a good example here is when I first got started in the painting business, the first job, so I use subcontractors, but the first job I did was I subbed it out to a group of guys. Everything went well. They painted the house great. We were working for this fix and flipper, and we finished the job. Comes time to get paid, and now this guy is not answering phone calls.
Right.
Can't get a hold of him or nothing, right? I had, my crew was freaking out. They're like, hey, we need to get paid. We need to get paid. I'm like, well, hey, I can't pay you until I get paid by these guys. And, ended up going out to like a month and a half. And, my crews are like, hey, like, we're going to sue you if you don't pay us. And, this is like the first job I ever subcontracted out. And I just remember how stressful that situation was. Like, I owed the crew maybe $1,500, which now is not a big deal. But I was like, oh my gosh, that's $1,500.
Yeah.
Like, how am I ever going to make that money to be able to pay them? Oh my gosh, they're going to sue me. And, in all reality, like, that's like a level 2 problem. I've had that happen where, we've got payment delayed out a couple of weeks or something. It's like, okay, it's not a big deal.
Sure.
You're just becoming bigger than each one of those problems. And,
absolutely.
The more stress and the more pressure you can handle without blowing up, like, the further and further you can get.
And out of that, I think that the key is experience, and really, going through those trying, tough times, right? Make those problems that much smaller for when they ever come up again. And part of the reason why, I love this acronym or mnemonic, or I'm not sure what it's called, but it's Kenai. I don't know if you're into Tony Robbins, but he has this really good saying, man. It's consistent and never ending improvement. And no matter what, man, you just got to keep the momentum going in your business. You got to continue to see another day, man. You get a client that doesn't pay you. I mean, yeah, at the end of the day, it's a horrible situation, but you keep moving forward. That's what it comes down to, man. I had a situation where, this was early on in my business. I had this metal oil door, dude, and I had no clue how to work with oil paint. But just being a young, hungry entrepreneur, not wanting to say no to anybody, which in retrospect I've learned my lesson. But turns out that I painted this oil door, man, and it started to sag. The oil paint, I didn't thin it down at all, so it was super heavy, man. I used the wrong brush, and next thing you know, man, this guy is furious. This is double door, man, this beautiful door, and I pretty much ruined the door. So then, I'm going back the next day. I buy this like really expensive, horribly chemical product to strip down the entire door. Can you imagine just the mess of trying to get oil off of a door, with this like super strong product, right? So the whole front porch is just loaded with tarps and napkins and I got red paint. Of course, it's like dark red, man. I got red paint all over me, man. And this guy is just he's just losing his patience because he's now seeing that
Yep.
I have no clue what I'm doing. And I
Mm-hmm.
just remember, and it was like a lightning, thundering storm happening, and I'm under this like overhang, so it wasn't like loading. I mean, it was just this moment of just like, am I doing the right thing here? Like, I had two employees. I mean, I'm pretty much begging for this job to just stay busy. Um, I'm worried about my reputation. I have no clue what I'm doing, and it was one of those things where I was like, let's get it, let's just do it, and just hammer it out, and I'm going to take the heat from the homeowner, and I'm going to take whatever punishment the rest of this job's going to give me. But pressing forward is something that I'll never forget, and I'll remember next time to make sure that any job I take is one that I know that I can manage and maintain. And that's part of the experience, man. And that's my go through story that I have for you.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
like that. Something I think your listeners might find some value in is, I feel like a lot of them, they're in that phase where they're in the brush right now. They're wanting to get out of the brush and start getting into sales, marketing, more of that avenue. And, some people think, hey, getting bigger, hey, that's taking more risk. It's putting more financial risk on you. That's one way to look at it. And that's one perspective. Something I've looked at is, hey, the bigger you get, hey, the more secure you actually get, right, Tanner? Because, for instance, you have that guy, you painted the door, say it was $1,000 to paint the door, say he didn't pay you. Well, if you're just in the brush painting, you're doing 5 houses a week. Well, that was one of your 5. Well, now you've only completed 4 houses and got paid on. That missing that 5th house is really going to hurt you because you were counting on it. But if you start bringing up more volume and you're doing 10 to 15 houses a week, well, now you have 10 to 15 different people paying you. And, as an entrepreneur, they say the average millionaire has 7 streams of income.
Multiple streams
So
right there.
Do you want 5 different people paying you a month, or do you want 15 different people paying you a month? Because say one person doesn't pay you, well, I'd rather be painting 15 houses then and get paid on 14 than paint 5 houses and get paid on 4.
Absolutely. And I agree. And there's a lot of guys out there, and, you just, jumping on Instagram, seeing how passionate some of my followers are about painting. And, some of them might misunderstand me where I say you need to get out of the brush. I'm not telling you need to stop painting. If that's your passion, that's what you love to do. But my recommendation is to anyone listening who loves to paint, who wants to keep painting, is set up another group of guys on the side that are going out there painting houses for you while you go and do your specialty work or whatever, your staining or whatever it is that you like to do. You don't have to be a full-time marketing manager like you and I are. You can still do your own thing, but to develop that second stream of income, third stream of income, fourth stream of income, whatever it is, that person decides to do, I think would be a huge benefit, so not to say that we're just 2 young entrepreneurs who never painted houses. I mean, I painted when I was a kid with my dad, but when I started my business, I was in the same boat as you, man. I had to Google how to estimate the outside of a house and how to paint the outside of a house. If I didn't have my Sherwin-Williams rep, who was so kind and who really just understood that I had no clue what I was doing, I probably would have gave up, because she was just, she walked me through the entire process of painting the outside of a house. And just don't think that we come from a place of like we don't respect the painting business. But at the end of the day, our focus is, number one, we're providing jobs to people, who do paint and use painting to support their families. And number two, I believe we're raising the standard in terms of people really truly recognizing that there are painting companies that have a business-like system and structure in place to deliver a quality result. Would you agree?
Absolutely. I think we're going through a shift in the entire painting industry. I think what you're doing, Tanner, of putting automated systems in there, I'd say 95% of painting companies don't have that. Yeah. And that's where I think the opportunity of people that are wanting to grow a business in this industry, the sky is really the limit. There's little competition, and, to get yourself, ranking at the top, it doesn't take a whole lot.
I mean, and you got to think another thing I think is awesome about the painting business is there are not many trades where we can work on the outside of the house and the inside of the house. So not only do we have, everyone who lives in a house as our potential customer, but we can also service the outside of that house too. So, I mean, the market is just incredible. And you're right. You don't need a lot to stand out. One person with a team of three separates themselves from, half of the competition, because people want three things. They want you to keep your promises on when you're going to show up. They want you to do a good job, make sure it's quality, and they want you to do it in a efficient amount of time. They don't want you moving into their house. So if you focus on those three things, you'll be successful, man. Well, your time is so much appreciated, man. I know you're a busy man. And before we wrap up, I just want to ask you, do you have a book recommendation, man? I want to see if there's, I know you've opened up a couple books. What do you recommend, man? Is there anything that really stands out to you, maybe that changed your way of thinking, that gave you a shift that you think would benefit anyone listening to this today?
Yeah, absolutely. I would say the book called The Law of Success.
Ooh, I like
and this is the unabridged version, I want to say, or
that's an
unedited
audio
version. You can probably get an audio book of it. So this is the book before Think and Grow Rich was made. So Think and Grow Rich was made from this book, and it basically, like, Andrew Carnegie had some guy go around and interview all these different people, all these, rich and successful people, find out what their secret to success was. And he breaks it down into, I want to say 13 different laws, and, how they all work off each other, and, how you can use that to your advantage and whatever you're doing. So I would say that was definitely a game changer book. And when I read that, I read it with like a group of 5 people, and, every 2 weeks we were meeting up and kind of talking about the chapter, what we learned, and, really breaking that book down and studying it has definitely been a huge impact for me.
To be honest with you, I don't think I've heard of that book. So that's going to definitely be one of an upcoming on my list, man. Hey, I appreciate your time, Kyler, man. I respect what you're doing. I look forward to seeing your growth, man. You're definitely ahead of the game and ahead of your time, man. So thanks again. I'm truly thankful to have you on the Trade Thrive podcast, man. Thanks so much.
Hey, thanks for having me, Tanner, and hope everybody has a great day.
Take it easy.
Bye.
Hey, I just want to take a second to thank you for joining me here on the Contractor Secrets podcast. I'm just going to take this opportunity to let you know that my passion is coaching people, helping people. I've changed my Instagram name to @contractorcoach. And I did that because that is my passion. I want to help you. So please reach out to me. If you have an issue going on in your business, send me an email, find me on Instagram, message me, and let's do a breakthrough session. I want to work through your problems in your business to help you get to that next level. And one thing that I always say is this, the difference between those that get over the humps and the hurdles in business is just a change in perspective. And that's what I plan to offer you. So get with me, message me, allow me to help you take your business to the next level.